So, with the spirit of dignity, with the spirit of kindness, with the spirit of compassion, with the spirit of going to places where we can meet people who really need our help, I would like to introduce the first speaker, Kevin Fagan. So, Kevin is a longtime and award-winning reporter and author, having spent over 3 decades at the San Francisco Chronicle before leaving in 2025 to pursue book writing. His awards include the National James Aronson Award for Social Justice Journalism, National Headliner, San Francisco Press Club Bell Workman Award, and John S. Knight Journalism Fellowship at Stanford University. He has also been nominated several times for Pulitzer Prize. His most recent publication is a highly acclaimed book entitled The Lost and the Found, a true story of homelessness, found family, and second chances, published in February 2025. New York Times described it as a riveting, deeply compassionate narrative of homelessness, despair, and hope. Book Browse described it as a rare look at citizens often denied their dignity and considered a sociology classic destined to become a must-read for anyone interested in understanding the homelessness epidemic in America. Beyond all these accolades, just the short time that I've known Kevin, either online or just since last night, he's just an amazing human being. And we're absolutely fortunate to have him come. Not only is he going to be here to give us a little bit of presentation, but I have never had a speaker said, "Can I bring my guitar too?" So Kevin, thank you so much. Welcome to St. Louis, and thank you for everything you've been doing for us.
Thank you. Thank you, Baron. I can say he's a nice guy too. I really enjoyed talking with him and getting to see what you guys do here. I covered homelessness all over the country for, well, 30 hard years and about 50 as a reporter. And the spirit that you're showing is just really inspiring and wonderful. I've got a little speech to give you, and then I'll sing you a song, and I think maybe even 2, if I can fit them in. You got 45 minutes, right?
You can take a little longer.
Thanks. Well, I've been writing about homeless people, mental illness, and criminal justice for, like I said, more than 40 years, nearly 50, specializing in rough street life, murder, and disasters. I wrote my first story on homelessness in 1978 when I was a journalism student at San Jose State University in California. I stayed out all night in the grittiest part of downtown alongside the campus and documented the chaotic scene that happened in those wee hours. There were street hookers, addicts, wandering mentally ill, people sleeping in doorways. This was 1978. The campus was ringed back then by board and care homes, which was part of that disastrous experiment of the 1970s and 80s in shutting down mental institutions and replacing them with smaller, cheaper community facilities. And the idea was it would be more compassionate to integrate the mentally ill into neighborhoods now that we had psychotropic drugs like lithium, rather than have them locked into expensive hospitals. And generally speaking, one side thought this was more humane. The other side thought, great, we can save some money. Reagan gets blamed for this, but as many of you know, it was a joint effort of the right and the left. And it didn't work well because the funding didn't follow. The board and care homes residents back then wandered in and out of campus, gibbering at telephone poles or rocking the place on benches. I used to play gigs at the Christmas time in a couple of those mental health homes. I wrote a song called Angelina about one of the patients. And she would amble around in a haze, her eyes blacked out with charcoal like eyeliner, mumbling to herself. And some of the lyrics were, "I can hear your voiceless talk as you speak your endless rhyme." She was heartbreaking, and she'd close her eyes and rock and hum while I sang Christmas carols. The street scene when I did the story back then in 1978 San Jose, it was chaos after midnight. Broken people with nowhere to go, open drug use, desperation, block after block. It ringed the campus in downtown San Jose. The point is this: what we now see in our streets, the catastrophe of chronically homeless people in an in-your-face display of drug use, mental crisis, pure impoverished despair, it's not new. It's just grown bigger and more visible. As a reporter, I've documented this phenomenon we now call homelessness as it developed in the wake of the destruction of support for the underclass in the 1970s and the 1980s. And I've spent the years since then documenting how we still haven't figured out as a country to adequately adjust. It's not that we don't know how to fix the mess. Some of the best practices in the nation are carried out in communities from coast to coast. Street medicine, for one. Supportive and affordable housing, counseling outreach, mental and drug rehab services connected to court and jail systems, homeward bound programs. California's governor alone has invested $24 billion into homeless programs since 2019. And without that investment and our state's innovative efforts, California's unhoused population would be many thousands more than its current tally of 187,000. Prevention before people actually hit the streets, it's every bit as important. The things you do in this room are absolutely crucial for saving lives, keeping people inside, living with dignity, helping people stay together, families. Without street medicine outreach, homeless outreach teams, crisis prevention programs to help people stay housed by fixing crises, the ruin and the misery in our communities would be incalculable. And in a lot of measures, it already is incalculable. The trouble with bringing all these efforts to scale and finding the ideal coordination in the morass of politics, government bureaucracy, and inefficiency, and the nonprofit landscape, you need to bring all these together and streamline them. For every one person taken off the streets in San Francisco, 4 more take their place. By some metrics, taking demographics into account, 30% of the nation is poor, at or below poverty level. And that is a fountain endlessly filling the ranks of the most desperate people at the bottom. As a reporter covering this year after year after year, it too often feels like homelessness is a constantly rolling tide, and we're using kiddie hand shovels to move the sand. In 2003, I spent 6 months in the street, sleeping outside, for an immersive homelessness investigation series. And at that time, the point in time count in San Francisco sat at 8,600. Today, it's 8,300. But people say the problem is worse than ever. There are a lot of reasons for that. One being that many of the 15,000 or so formerly homeless people who live in supportive housing spend their days outside, looking homeless and acting homeless because we're never able to staff enough case managers to steer them into healthier lives. And is this any wonder? We are the only westernized country of our ilk that has no national health system, no guaranteed affordable housing of some sort, no consistent laws for living wage, no comprehensive programs for poor families to stay employed and housed. We don't have enough mental health services, substance abuse rehab. We live in a robber baron era reminiscent of the 1890s. Sorry to get a little political on you, but that's where that goes. Speaking as a reporter, where untold riches boil at the top and the rest are left to munch on increasingly smaller piles of crumbs. About 60% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck and don't have more than $400 on hand. And we have somewhere between 3 million and 6 million of our fellow citizens living without a place to call home. And I consider that a disgrace and a tragedy. One of my early journalism jobs was working at the BBC radio in London. And I got a firsthand hit of what a society looks when a dog-eat-dog mentality is not such a driving force. England today has a population of about 60 million people, and its chronically homeless population is about the same size as San Francisco's. It's not hard to know why. They have national health and rehab services, council housing, living wage laws, vigorous childcare support, the kinds of things that we should have and we don't. I made covering this never-ending catastrophe especially because it was personal. They say, write what you know, and I knew this life. I grew up mostly poor, was homeless myself at times when I was young, left home at 16 to live in an unfinished garage at first, building my furniture out of scrap wood, working as a dishwasher, house cleaner, anything I could find to put myself through college, as I figured college was my way out. I wound up sleeping in my car a lot while I was going to college until I figured out how to slide a steady job and a roof between my class studies. Being in that world, in the street where police rapped on my car window at all hours telling me to move on, bum, there were no niceties. Nobody used the word homeless back then. If you slept outside, you were a bum. The mentally ill were just crazy. Substance users were just called junkies. Those are still the words street people use today, but we in journalism and in the professions helping these populations use the softer terms to be kinder. And I understand that. And so this is so people who aren't in that world aren't judgmental. But the grit under the language is ugly and real. And I never forget that. I sometimes say I speak two languages, English and street. And I suspect many of you do too. You see, nodding heads. After I graduated, I traveled as a street musician in Europe, Australia, New Zealand, in between journalism jobs, sleeping in fields and doorways. It was familiar enough to me, so it was kind of an adventure. But I also knew I'd be coming back to stability as I dug into my career. The experiences served me well. I've never been afraid of the streets as I immersed into them time and again as a journalist, sleeping outside for stories, getting up as close and personal as I could to the people I write about. I concentrate mostly on the chronically homeless, which, as most of you know, is about 30% of most homeless populations. Those are the folks been in the street for at least a year, usually hobbled by physical disability, drug addiction, or mental illness. They are the most visible, of course, and there aren't many reporters who really like covering this population. I do, and it doesn't mean it's easy. I've found that camps, outdoor drug addicts, and street alcoholics are comparatively simple to find, to get to know, and to write about. For me, I like talking to homeless folks. The mentally ill can be harder, as a lot of you know, both from the physical practicality and because of privacy laws restricting access for us reporters. You can't have a useful conversation with someone who's flipping out, having an episode. You have to try to catch them in between, and that takes time. You have to wait, you have to hover, you have to come back. And it has to be done most of the time for us reporters without a whole lot of help from health workers, because there are HIPAA rules, and I respect that. But it's also why you don't see a whole lot of really engaging, deep stories about people going through mental episodes. We usually write about folks after they've cleaned up or are dead. I haven't had a whole lot of trouble doing those interviews. I did let my caution slip once a couple of years ago, and a man having an episode who was super fueled by meth chased me and slashed me up with a knife. Get patched up and you go back in the street. That's what you do as a reporter, if you like the job. This all brings me to the two people in my book. Here, I guess you're going to auction some off later. Great, thank you. Giving it, even better. Great. Thank you. It's the two people who are the main characters in this book are Rita Grant, Tyson Filzer, and they represent some of the conundrums this gathering here today is meant to address. Drug addiction trapped both these people in the streets. A legal system meant to steer them away from those streets failed them, and mental illness helped kill one of them. I met Rita in a colony of a dozen homeless addicts living on a traffic median that they called Homeless Island in 2003, when I was spending those 6 months on the street to try to figure out why there were so many homeless people in San Francisco, and what could be done about it. I produced a 5-day series called Shame of the City, which, I don't want to brag, it helped promote supportive housing throughout the country, which I thought was a wonderful thing. I'll read from my book just a little bit about what discovering that island was like. This part comes in early in those 6 months, right after I got mauled by some dogs in a homeless camp, which was not fun. I was stupid. I put my hand in between them and say, "Oh, nice dogs," and they went at me and chewed me up pretty good. Let's see, this is. So I checked into the emergency room to get patched up and filled with antibiotics. Okay, great. This is Joe, our great audio guy, right? Audio visual guy? Yes. Okay, thanks. Then I went home and slept a day, got patched up. Meanwhile, Brant, who was my partner, he was a photographer, and he and I spent those 6 months together, actually 10 years covering homelessness all over the country. He wandered over to a corner where Van Ness becomes South Van Ness Avenue and crosses Mission Street. I don't know how many of you are familiar with San Francisco, but that's just a little south of City Hall. And this is where he first spotted Little Bit, striding down the street with her tiny legs pumping purposefully while she swung her arms back and forth like a kid skipping to the playground. She was only about 4 feet tall, so Brant thought she was a child. She wasn't. She was 32-year-old Susan Beach, known to street cleaners as the Midget, and to her pals as Little Bit, and to anyone running a shop nearby watching her smoke crack, shoot heroin, and entice tricks to the alleyways as an exasperating paragon of tragedy. A dad, like me, Brant hurried over to talk to her, got the real skinny on who she was, then met her crew. There were about a dozen of them, all hanging out on a windswept triangle of concrete with a couple of shading trees overlooking a cluster of tarps, cardboard, and shopping carts. This was just a few blocks from City Hall, and the traffic on busy South Van Ness and Mission roared by like metal rivers. What do you call this spot on the traffic island, Brant asked. Homeless Island, they said. And that's where we met Rita. And Rita had been there for several years, and her boyfriend, Tommy, got flesh-eating disease, necrotizing fasciitis, and essentially ate him alive. Brant and I went and found his body. We came back and told the homeless islanders, and Rita flipped out and hit a hard dive. We thought she was going to die, but she had a number of abscesses, HIV, Hep C, a lot of the usual things you find in someone who's been out in the street for a decade. But luckily for her, Rita's sister Pam, back in Florida where they grew up, read my story about Homeless Island. And using my story as a guide, she and one of Rita's daughters flew out, they found her, and they took her home. And that's where Rita, after hard work by herself and her family, amazingly and inspiringly shook her addictions to heroin and crack and became a health nutritionist and a licensed massage therapist. I wrote about her recovery, and we became friends from then on, talking frequently on the phone, sending pictures and holiday cards. And I won't tell you how it all ends. You can read it in the book. But one of the most joyful things for me was when I wrote that first story about her recovery, I mentioned that she had no teeth because she had meth mouth. And a dentist read that story back in San Francisco, contacted a dentist in Florida and got her teeth. And also after writing that story, Gavin Newsom, who was mayor back then, thought, wow, that was a successful reunification. So he started the Homeward Bound program, which gives people tickets to go back home to their families if both sides are willing to give it a shot. And about 15,000 people have taken that ride since he created that back then. And half of them actually stay home, which I figure is a pretty good percentage. Some of the street medicine folks are nodding their heads. Now, Tyson, I met in 2019 on a routine story about a proposed homeless shelter in San Francisco. And after it ran, his brother Barron in Ohio called and asked if I could help find him. He flew out to the city, connected with me and an addiction interventionist named Vicky. And after a day of scouring the spots I knew where to scour, we ran into a lot of homeless pals of Tyson's, including one named Seven. We promised him $20 if he'd call us if he ran into Tyson. And that's just what he did at 10:30 at night in the Tenderloin, the grittiest neighborhood in town. We all dashed over there, and I'll read to you what happened at the moment the two boys, the brothers, connected. Book's only about 300 pages long, so it won't take you all day to read. I wanted to be quick. So. This is right at the second these two met. Time froze just long enough to hear the crunch of discarded needles and glass meth pipes underfoot. long enough to hear the low murmur of a dozen or so homeless people sitting or sprawled on the sidewalk all around them in the darkness. Long enough for Barron to focus in on the face of this brother who until this evening he hadn't been sure was still alive. Tyson spoke first, quietly. Hey, Barron. Relief and sadness swept over Barron, but he knew he had to keep his cool. Don't mess this up. Keep it simple. How you doing, man? Tyson stared, miles of hard times in his face mixed with a note of disbelief. Seconds passed. Nice to see you, Tyson said, and he stuck out his hand. Nice to see you. Give me a hug. Barron pulled him close. At Tyson's feet were piles of clothes he'd fished out of trash cans all day to sell later on the street. Want me to watch that stuff for you, Tyson? Take care while you take time with your family? Seven asked. Tyson nodded. Vicky had parked the car and walked over. She told Seven they brought the $20 they promised him. Thanks a lot, man, Seven said. And they know, hey, we're all glad you guys came. Awesome, said Vicky. Thank you, said Barron. You guys did an amazing job, said Seven. Tyson got ready fast. All he had was a small backpack with a few things in it. Want to go for a ride, Barron asked. Yeah, Tyson got in the car. And then we went over to a hotel, and I actually helped with the intervention. I wasn't the main guy. It was Barron, and Tyson took the help. Barron raised money through a GoFundMe to get Tyson into rehab, and he took him home to Ohio. Tyson shook off the fentanyl, heroin, and meth, and once again became the charming, good-natured self he'd been when he grew up in privilege in the upscale, small Bay Area town of Danville. He found jobs, reconnected with family, but then after about 6 months, the bipolar condition nobody knew he had surged and bit him after he'd stopped self-medicating with narcotics. He caught a bus back to San Francisco, overdosed on fentanyl, and died on the same block where we found him. And someone robbed his dead body before the medical examiner came. Rita was a surfer girl, a homecoming queen, and Olympics-bound gymnast as a kid. And she was a good mother to 5 children in Key West before drugs sucked her into the streets. Jail and rehab didn't work until she was finally ready to take the help at around age 50, when she disintegrated into a rail-thin street wraith riddled with abscesses. Along the way, there'd been a whole range of efforts, including those by my street medicine friends, Dr. Barry Zevin, who some of you may know, and Jason Albertson, a terrific guy. Other street counselors, and even me as I sat with her on Homeless Island and told her, you can have a life again. You can be inside again. You really can. Just take the help. But it wasn't until she was really, really ready. You know how that goes. Most of you in this room. And her family was there to give their open arms another try. Tyson was a bright college-bound kid before his undiagnosed mental condition pitched him into drugs and then the streets. Jail and rehab didn't work for him either until around age 40, when he drowned in that street life of fear and drugs for so long he was ready to take help. And that was aided in no small part by the efforts that led up to that from street medicine and Hot Team. Both of these people were so much of the sprawling street addict landscape of San Francisco that they were practically invisible to the rest of the world. But once I got to know them, they crawled into my heart. They were troubled, messy, angry, and lost until they were found and became the shining selves they were meant to be. And then they were lost again to death. I just gave away the ending on Rita, but she died happily. Cancer. By then, I'd gotten to know their loving families and witnessed the Herculean efforts they made to rescue them. Rescues that wouldn't have been successful without the understaffed but important government help that they got in terms of housing aid, medical care, and more. That system with the love of their families worked. It took too many years, but that's often what it takes. Perseverance, hope. Now, Joe has said that this slider will help me with some photos. I'll show you what these folks look like. So I thought that would kind of help. There we are. Oh, wait, no. There we are. Yes. Now here's Rita. That was her in high school. They called her the homecoming queen. She was actually the runner-up, but she may as well have been. That's as a young mother before she disappeared into the street. And that's what she looked like when I found her. That's her right after Tommy died. And she was pretty much inconsolable. That's Tommy, her boyfriend, who Brant and I found in the dead. And that's what Rita looked like every day. And this is Tyson. Tyson was a really good student, sharp kid, the popular guy in school, played football, was an actor in a local theater. And that's what he looked like when I found him. He was sitting on a piece of cardboard. And I interviewed him, and that photo and that interview is what alerted Barron that he was still alive. And that's what brought Barron out from Ohio. That's Barron looking. We went over and we talked to folks like this in the street. The poster he's showing has that photo of Tyson on the piece of cardboard saying, "You seen my brother? Seen my brother?" And that's that moment I described in the book. The photographer with me, Brant had retired by then, but the photographer captured that exact moment, which I really love that he did that. And here's Rita. After she got home and got teeth, that's her sister Pam. And that's what she looked like just a couple years later. She went from that person in the street to this. And in 2022, Brant and I went back to visit her in Florida, and she had cancer, and she was not long from passing away from it. But that's what she looked like. She had such joy right to the end. There's Tyson. He went to one of the rehab places. First he detoxed, and then he went to Mississippi to this place with the horse rehab, which, at first I thought, yeah, right, horses. No, it's actually pretty good. It works. And that's him and Barron flying home back to Ohio. And that's him with his little niece, Penny. Such a sweetheart. I just saw them a few weeks ago in Ohio. The family. That's him. It was all looking good until it didn't. And there's Barry. I threw a couple of these in. You might recognize Barry, some of you. Barry Zevin. He founded street medicine in San Francisco. And there's Jason. He founded the street engagement teams in San Francisco. That's a whole other story. If you want to look it up, I just wrote about him a month ago. He slipped, smoked a little fentanyl, and overdosed and died. And we were crushed, but he did a lot of good along the way, including with the homeless islanders. And there's Little Bit and Vina behind her, a woman who had one leg. She can make $100 panhandling in an afternoon because she'd wheel her wheelchair into the traffic, and people would stop and give her $20 bills, 5s, 10s. There's Tommy. That's what the island looked like. Just that chunk of concrete. There it is with the trees. I spent endless nights sleeping on that piece of concrete alongside the islanders. Didn't have tents back then. Tents came along with the Occupy movement. Back then it was tarps and cardboard. There's a Little Bit getting ready to shoot up. She would have to pick her scabs before she'd go turn tricks because the guys who hired her thinking she was a child didn't want scabs. It was, I watched that as it happened. It's interesting, as they say. Horrible. And this is Jill May. She hung out on the island a lot. And I think I'll sing you a song that pertains to her. She was with Ricky. That's the guy with her. He was her pimp and the father of her 3 kids. And Ricky stiffed a crack dealer on $150 worth of crack. So the dealer came back and stripped Jill naked, doused her in gas, and burned her to death. And after I used to love talking with her. She'd want my notebooks, my reporter notebooks as journals. So I'd give them to her. She'd write in there. We'd talk. She'd say how she really wanted to get off the street, really wanted to get straight. And Then she'd lose the notebook and I'd give her another one. And after the killer was convicted, her family and the homicide cop and I all went out to the spot where she was burned to death, and there were still parts of her baked into the asphalt. And I wrote this song some years before, and I only sing it when I think it fits. So I sang this song at that memorial. What do you think, Joe? Great. When the sun is on my shoulders, when the road is open wide, when the morning fills with promise, when I look up to the sky, when I lose my way and stumble home, when the wind around me sighs, I will think of you. I will feel you in my soul, and I will see you in my dreams. You're the ones I love, the ones I hate, the ones I haven't seen. And I'm a better man for loving you, and the truth you help me see. I will think of you. There's nothing left to hurt you now. What's done is done, just let it all go by. You can't make sense of something, makes no sense at all. Now we learn the meaning of goodbye. So when the sun is on my shoulders, when the road is open wide, when the morning fills with promise, when I look up to the sky, when I lose my way and stumble home, when the wind around me sighs, I will think of you. I will think of you. Guess I should bow like the Beatles since I got their amp, huh? Well, when Tyson and Rita died, they did break my heart. All of them broke my heart. I long ago shed the concept that as a writer, I have to be absolutely objective and removed from the people that I cover. You're a human first and a reporter second. When I squat on the sidewalk next to someone or sleep alongside them, I don't just fire off questions, I chat them up first. I connect, let them know that I'm actually interested in their lives before I ask the questions I need to for whatever story I'm doing. I'm never afraid to say, what do you think you can do to get off the streets? How about taking the help that the counselors offer? This life is not healthy for you or for anyone around you. And homeless people have great bullshit detectors. They can tell if I'm sincere or not. And I am sincere. I've never met a homeless person who, in their most honest moments at 2 a.m., really wants to be homeless. Everyone was somebody's baby at some point. A little kid with an unwritten future and hopes before bad choices, bad fate led them to ruin. I always remember that. I can add one more passage to read you from the book, then I'll sing you one more quick song. Am I still good on the time? Okay. This is toward the ending of the book, kind of part of a manifesto of sorts. It would be nice to have figured out conclusive fixes to homelessness, to societal abuse, to the abandonment of the poor and the lost, but this hasn't happened. Brant, my photographer partner, and I set out to dig hard for solutions to the disaster when we took on that Shame of the City series in 2003, and over the 10, 15 years we were together since. And we concluded that supportive housing, rehab, and street outreach were the crucial tools in the fight. But after all his efforts and all my writing ever since, and the millions of dollars spent, and the numberless programs launched, there's still no end to the crisis. I still have hope, but I think, as I've made it clear in this book, the atrociously unforgivable poverty our nation creates and allows to continue hobbles our efforts. If we stop betraying our citizens with national policies, national and local policies and practices that crush them and perpetuate an underclass, the problem can be solved. Until then, a lot of it is good intentions and partial successes. But there is this: no matter how far people sink into indigence, the demons of addiction and abandonment or mental illness, there is always that grain of hope. There is always that younger self deep inside who once had a future and could have it again. Looking for that hope, talking to street folks about that hope they so often lose touch with, helping readers understand how awful it can be to be trapped in a life gone wrong, and how damnably unjust that is in a society as rich as ours. That has real worth, real emotional reward. It's a relief working with that, and it's always helped me process what I see and feel. Now I'll sing you this song that I learned as a street busker in New Zealand, of all places, 40 years ago, which just shows you how constant homelessness has been. I didn't write this one. It's about hobos, but hobos are just a form of homelessness. I was walking by the graveyard late last Friday night. I heard somebody yelling. It sounded like a fight. It was just a drunken hobo dancing circles in the night, pouring whiskey on the headstones in the blue moonlight. So often have I wondered where these homeless brothers go, down in some hidden valley where their sorrows cannot show, where the police cannot find them, where the wanted man can go. There's freedom when you're walking, even though you're walking slow. Smash your bottle on a gravestone and live while you can. That homeless brother is my friend. It's hard to be a pack rat, it's hard to be a beau. Yeah, living so much harder where the heartless people go. Somewhere the dogs are barking and the children seem to know. Even Jesus on the highway was a lost hobo. And they hear holy silence from the temples in the hills. They see his ragged tatters as another kind of frill. And they envy him the sunshine, but they pity him the chill. They're sad to do their living for some other kind of thrill. Smash your bottle on a gravestone and live while you can. That homeless brother is my friend. Somewhere there was a woman, somewhere there was a child, somewhere there was a cottage where the marigolds grew wild. But somewhere's just like nowhere when you leave it for a while. You'll find the broken hearted when you're traveling jungle style. Down the bowels of a broken land where the birds live like men, where those who keep their senses have been taken back again. Where the nightstick cracks with crazy rage, where madmen don't pretend, where wealth has no beginning, poverty no end. Smash your bottle on a gravestone and live while you can. That homeless brother is my friend. That homeless brother is my friend. thank you, Farron, for having me. Thank you all for having me. I appreciate you listening, not walking out.
Don't leave yet. We have time for a question.
Oh, yes.
Because we can't let you off the stage without a question to the audience. So please come to the microphone and you can just introduce yourself and our organization. This is your chance to actually ask a question.
Yeah, please do. I love talking to folks.
Maybe not.
Probably got to turn it on.
Okay, so now you can hear. All right, let me introduce myself. My name is Ksenia Kos, and I'm a neurologist at this hospital, at Mercy Hospital. And as a physician, we always, when there is a problem, the way how we think is we try to find the root cause of the problem. And that's the best way, in my opinion, to treat any medical condition. If you know the cause, you treat the cause. And thank you so much for this really very touching stories. And I'm sure you have heard many more that you will share with us in your book. But in all of your work with the unhoused and homeless people and the pictures that you showed, at some point something happened and it could have gone this way, went the other way. This is what I'm trying to understand. What is the most common cause that makes people go this way and not that way at certain juncture in their life?
There's several, and you're right. Whenever I try to do a comprehensive story looking into homeless folks, you want to dig through and figure out what happened. You don't just take it face value. It's domestic violence. It's poverty. They get evicted. People get evicted. The parents can be addicted to something and neglectful. The mental illness, drug abuse. Although a lot of folks aren't necessarily drug addicts when they hit the street, but you've been on there for several years. A lot of times you do pick up some kind of habit. It's a number of things. I always view it as a ladder. You have to bang down the ladder of your support system before you wind up in the street. Your family, and then you turn to relatives, and then you turn to shelters and governments or government aid. Then you go to shelters, and finally you rattle all the way down to the street. It's a number of junctures that throws someone all the way to the bottom. What do you think, Farron?
We call it multifactorial, and I think it is absolutely true that when you do ask people, you hear different answers. And I agree with you. I think if you look at the population of people certainly we see on the street, we find that there are multiple potential reasons. And I don't think it's just a one single particular factor, multiple factors, none of which are being necessarily addressed effectively by society in general.
Yeah, and you have to take all the resources to address the particular afflictions that are bedeviling people, not just one approach.
It certainly is a complicated issue, but I think sometimes you can't tackle all of the factors at once. So if somehow some analysis of some sort would kind of maybe, sort this out and say, is it a mental illness that's unrecognized by us physicians, perhaps?
Yeah, that's what happened with Tyson. No one knew he was bipolar.
Right, so those kinds of things.
And so that's why supportive housing. I am a bit of an evangelist for good supportive housing. If you have case managers who are enough case managers that can address these various things. Oh, is it drugs? Is it mental illness? Maybe it's just a job problem. Address what it specifically is, not just a blanket approach.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Kevin. Wonderful, wonderful presentation.
Thanks, Farron.
And songs were just amazing. Thank you.
Thank you all very much. Oh, this slideshow, I think. Hey, Joe, doesn't this thing keep going? Yeah. It's I'll get you to the end. There we are. Now you can go to the next.
Great. Thank you.
All right.
Thanks a lot. Thank you.